My name was written on the seating chart in elegant calligraphy, but not where I ever expected to see it. At the very bottom, in smaller letters than the rest, it simply read, Overflow 1. The wedding coordinator led me through rows of beautifully set tables, covered with roses and crystal glasses, and then stopped near the restroom corridor. There it was, a single metal folding chair, with no cushion, no linen, no place setting. A chair that looked like it belonged backstage, not at the reception of a 300-guest country club wedding. That was my seat, my place at my younger sister, Ava's wedding. Even now, the memory still burns in me like fire. I'm Samantha Reed, 32 years old, born and raised in Denver, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the quiet one in the shadows. My sister Ava, she was the shining star, the golden child with perfect hair, perfect grades, and a personality that drew everyone in. She got the spotlight, I got the leftovers. Growing up, our parents never hid their favoritism. At every piano recital, Ava received roses, cameras flashing, thunderous applause. When I came home with an academic award, the reaction was always, "That's nice, honey," before the conversation shifted back to Ava's latest success. It wasn't just favoritism, it was erasure. I tried to convince myself that being invisible was safer. If I stayed quiet, if I didn't demand too much, maybe I could at least keep the peace. So I became the helper, the extra set of hands, the one who showed up early, stayed late, and asked for nothing. I told myself that was love, that was loyalty. But the wedding changed everything. The months leading up to Ava's big day had already been hard. She chose her bridal party without me, filling it with college friends, cousins, even Liam's sister, who she had only known for a year. She gave me errands instead. Pick up napkins, call the florist, confirm the menu. I did it all without complaint, hoping maybe on the actual day she would recognize me, hoping she would see I had been there all along. That morning, I got up before sunrise to help my grandmother dress. I ironed silk robes for the bridesmaids while they sipped champagne and took selfies. I carried garment bags, steamed wrinkles, fetched phone chargers, and smiled through the ache in my chest. I wasn't a sister at that wedding. I was hired help without the paycheck. Still, I kept telling myself the ceremony would make it worth it. The reception would make it worth it. That maybe, just maybe, Ava had planned a surprise, some moment to acknowledge me. But then I saw that chart, Overflow 1. The words sliced through every excuse I'd made for years. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an oversight. It was a decision. As I stood frozen by the ballroom doors, I caught something even worse. My mother's voice floated out from the bridal suite. She didn't realize I was close enough to hear. "One chair is fine for Sam," she said briskly to the planner. "She drifts anyway." Her words hit harder than the sight of the folding chair. They told the truth I had never wanted to face. In my family's eyes, I was never meant to belong. And that was the moment I realized this wedding wasn't just Ava's perfect day. It was the stage where my family had decided, once and for all, where I stood. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, hit that subscribe button for more real-life stories. From the very beginning of the engagement, Ava made it clear where I stood. Not beside her in a silk robe, not holding her bouquet, not listed among her bridesmaids. She wanted me in the background. She didn't even try to dress it up. When I asked her casually, over brunch, why I wasn't included, she laughed and said, "You've never been into girly stuff. I figured you'd be relieved." Relieved. That word replayed in my mind for weeks. Relieved not to be standing with my only sister on the most important day of her life. But instead of confronting her, I did what I'd always done. I tried to prove my worth by helping in any way I could. I spent late nights writing thank you cards. When she said she didn't have time, I color-coded spreadsheets for gifts and RSVPs. I even hand-addressed hundreds of envelopes until my wrist cramped. Ava would smile vaguely and mutter, "You're the best, Sam," before turning back to her phone. Those crumbs of appreciation kept me going. And then came the message that shattered the illusion completely. It was 2 weeks before the wedding when my phone buzzed with a notification from our family group chat. I tapped it without thinking. Instead of the usual string of updates, I saw a screenshot forwarded by mistake. It was from another chat, this one between Ava, my mom, and her maid of honor. The image was of the seating chart in progress. My name, in neat black letters, had already been slotted at Overflow 1-restroom. Below it, Ava had typed, "Better here than in photos. Don't want her face throwing off the symmetry." My mother replied with a thumbs-up emoji. And then the maid of honor added a string of laughing faces. I sat there, staring at the screen. My breath caught in my throat. They weren't even hiding it anymore. It wasn't about fire codes or guest counts or last-minute changes. It was deliberate. They had chosen to put me there, like luggage to be stored out of sight. When I finally confronted Ava in person, my voice was shaking. "I saw the chat," I whispered. "You really think I don't belong at a table?" She blinked, then shrugged. "Sam, don't be dramatic. Someone had to be there. You're strong. You can handle it." Strong. Another word that sounded like a compliment, but really meant expendable. I told myself to hold it together. I reminded myself that no matter how painful the exclusion felt, this was still my sister's wedding. I didn't want to ruin it for her. I kept steaming dresses, picking up lunch orders, ferrying flowers back and forth. On the outside, I looked calm, dependable, unshaken. On the inside, I was unraveling. By the time the wedding day arrived, the pressure was crushing. I woke up before dawn, ironed my dusty blue dress, and painted on a smile. Tried not to think about that screenshot, the mocking emojis, the careless words. Maybe, just maybe, when the lights came on and the music started, things would be different. But as the cocktail hour ended, staff began directing guests toward the ballroom. Everyone held crisp, white envelopes with their table numbers written inside. Everyone except me. I approached the welcome table, trying to sound casual. "Hi, I didn't get my assignment. I'm Samantha Reed, the bride's sister." The coordinator's polite smile didn't reach her eyes. She checked her tablet, then gestured toward the heavy ballroom doors. "Follow me. I'll show you." I clutched my purse tighter, my stomach in knots, as she pushed the doors open wide. The morning of the wedding was supposed to feel magical. That's what people always say, right? The bride surrounded by love, the family buzzing with excitement, the air thick with celebration. For me, it felt like a 12-hour shift at a job I never applied for. I woke before sunrise, my heart already racing. Ava had texted me at midnight with a list of things that still needed handling. Garment bags needed moving, Grandma needed help dressing, the florist needed confirming. There was no, "Good morning, Sam. Want to come get your hair done with us?" No invitation to sip mimosas with the other women in matching silk robes. Just orders. By 7, I was at my parents' house, running up and down the basement stairs, hauling dresses. The bridesmaids giggled in the living room as stylists curled their hair and brushed their lashes. Music played, champagne poured. I was invisible in my dusty t-shirt, arms full of steaming fabric. "Sam, can you grab my phone charger from the car?" one cousin called, without even looking up. I nodded, of course, because that's who I was, the one who said yes. At one point, I slipped into the kitchen to catch my breath and text my boyfriend, hoping for a little comfort. We'd been dating 8 months. Not forever, but long enough I thought I could lean on him. "Wish you were here. This day feels heavy." The reply came seconds later. "Good luck today. You'll be fine. No, I'm proud of you. No, I'll be thinking of you." Just a flat message that felt more like a brush-off than support. I stared at the screen, realizing I would be facing the whole day completely alone. Still, I kept moving. I zipped up gowns, buttoned Grandma's dress, fetched coffees. Every laugh from the bridal suite reminded me I wasn't welcome in it. Then, as I walked past the hallway table where the planner had set down her iPad, I noticed the seating chart glowing on the screen. My stomach twisted. I shouldn't look, but something pulled me closer. There it was, my name, not under family table, not even at the cousins' table, in neat digital letters, overflow 1-restroom corridor. And worse than that, the changelog was visible. It showed that only 2 days earlier, my name had been under family table. Then someone, username Ava Reed, had reassigned it, finalized, approved. My chest tightened. This wasn't some oversight. It wasn't the planner's call. Ava had typed it herself. She'd looked at the list of guests, seen my name, and thought, better near the bathrooms. For a long moment, I just stood there, fingers trembling above the screen. I thought about taking a screenshot. I thought about marching into the bridal suite and demanding an explanation. Instead, I locked the iPad and set it back on the table as if nothing had happened, because deep down, I already knew what the explanation would be. Ava would smile tightly, maybe laugh, and say, "Don't be dramatic, Sam. It's just seating. Someone had to be there." I'd heard it before. Different words, same dismissal. I went back to ironing dresses with a lump in my throat, trying to hold myself together. But the truth was now undeniable. My own sister had written me out of her story, and soon the entire ballroom would see it too. The ceremony was perfect. At least, that's how it looked from the 4th row, where I sat quietly beside a pair of distant cousins I barely knew. Ava floated down the aisle on our father's arm, her gown glowing in the late afternoon light. Every camera flashed, every guest smiled, every detail seemed choreographed to perfection. I held Grandma's hand steady, adjusted her shawl when the breeze picked up, and reminded myself why I was here. I wanted Ava happy. I wanted her marriage to begin with joy, even if that joy didn't include me. When Liam saw Ava, his whole face softened with awe. For a moment, I felt a flicker of warmth. Whatever else was happening, at least their love seemed real. But the small comfort didn't last. When the vows ended and applause filled the garden, I stood apart. Guests surged toward the terrace for cocktails, while the wedding party gathered for photos. I trailed behind, making sure Grandma found a seat, grabbing sparkling water for her while trays of champagne flutes floated past. The photographer posed Ava with her bridesmaids in their matching gowns, all smiles and laughter. Not once did anyone wave me in. Not for family shots, not for casual group pictures. I told myself it was fine, that the portraits needed to be streamlined, but it was another reminder of where I stood, or rather, where I didn't. As the sun dipped lower, staff began guiding guests toward the ballroom. Everyone pulled crisp envelopes from their purses and jacket pockets, table numbers written in elegant script. I reached into my clutch and felt nothing. No envelope, no assignment. Trying to sound calm, I approached the welcome table. "Excuse me, I didn't get a card. I'm Samantha Reed, the bride's sister." The coordinator's polite smile faltered. She checked her tablet, and I caught the flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Right," she murmured. "Follow me." My pulse quickened as she led me through the ballroom doors. The space was breathtaking. Round tables covered in white linens and gold-rimmed china filled the room. Tall crystal vases overflowed with roses, their scent mingling with candlelight. Each seat had a charger plate, polished silverware, a menu tied with silk ribbon. It was the kind of reception you see in bridal magazines, until we reached the back. "There you are," the planner said softly, gesturing. Against the far wall, next to a discreet door marked restrooms, sat a single folding chair. No linen, no plate, no glass, just cold metal tucked into the shadows. I blinked, unable to breathe. "There must be a mistake," I whispered. The planner shifted uncomfortably. "No mistake. The seating chart was finalized yesterday." My eyes darted to the giant mirror near the entrance, names etched in calligraphy. Guests crowded around, laughing as they found their tables. I scanned quickly, and there, at the very bottom corner, in smaller letters than the rest, "Overflow, 1 Samantha Reed." My name, displayed for everyone to see. Not sister, not family, not even a number at a table. Overflow. I backed away, clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles whitened. Around me, guests exclaimed over centerpieces and compared seat locations. None of them realized the bride's only sister had been deliberately sidelined to the bathroom corridor. The humiliation was sharp, but even sharper was the clarity. Ava hadn't made a mistake. She had made a choice, and suddenly I had to ask myself, what would anyone else have done in my place? Sit quietly, smile, and swallow it? Or finally refuse to disappear? I lowered myself onto the folding chair, its metal frame icy through the fabric of my dusty blue dress. From that lonely spot against the wall, I had a perfect view of the celebration, and yet I wasn't part of it. Guests filed past on their way to the restrooms, brushing against me, offering polite nods, or avoiding eye contact altogether. Within minutes, the consequences of my placement were clear. A server carrying trays of champagne paused, then moved on. I had to raise my hand and ask, "Excuse me, may I have one?" His startled face said it all. He hadn't realized I was a guest. When he finally handed me a glass, it wobbled in my lap because I had no table to set it on. Dinner service began. Plates of filet and salmon swept past me in waves, each delivered to tables glowing with candlelight. I sat waiting, unsure if I'd been forgotten, until another embarrassed server placed my plate directly on my knees. Balancing silverware on a paper napkin, I forced myself to chew, while laughter and music swelled around me. And then came the moment that broke me open. A boy, maybe 7 years old, stopped in front of me while waiting for the restroom. His mother chatted with friends nearby. He stared, curious. "Are you the bathroom lady?" he asked innocently. "My mom said to tip the bathroom person, but I only have quarters." Heat flooded my face. His mother gasped and pulled him away, whispering apologies. But the damage was done. Several guests had overheard, and their pitying looks cut deeper than words. When toasts began, I stood, craning my neck over heads. Ava's best friend gushed. Liam's best man told stories that made everyone laugh. Then Ava herself raised her glass. She thanked everyone who truly matters. Our parents, Liam's family, her bridesmaids, even the wedding planner. She never once mentioned me. Her eyes skimmed past me once, pausing just long enough to confirm what I already knew. She hadn't forgotten. She had chosen silence. My father chuckled afterward. "At least you had a seat," he said, when I whispered about my humiliation. My mother's tight smile carried its usual warning, "Don't make a scene." I felt tears threatening, but I swallowed them down. That was my training. Don't cry. Don't argue. Don't embarrass the family. Smile through it. Be useful. But for the first time, something inside me snapped. As the DJ cued music and the crowd roared, I pulled out my phone. My hands trembled, not from nerves, but from something sharper. Righteous anger. I opened my email. Attached were screenshots. The seating chart labeled Overflow 1. The group chat where Ava joked about symmetry. The receipts from the hundreds of dollars I'd spent on her wedding errands. I drafted a message to Ava and our parents. This is what you did. This is what it cost me. This is why I'm leaving. My thumb hovered over send, and then I stopped. What would sending it do? Expose the truth? Yes. Humiliate Ava? Probably. Burn the last fragile bridge? Definitely. I saved it instead, setting a timer for the next morning at 8. If I didn't cancel it, the email would send automatically. It was my insurance, my proof, my voice, waiting. From my corner by the bathroom, I looked out over the glittering ballroom. Ava spun on the dance floor, laughing with Liam. Our parents clinked glasses. Guests cheered. None of them knew what was sitting unsent in my drafts folder. Evidence that could shatter the perfect illusion with a single click. I waited for the right moment to approach Ava. Between the dances, the photos, and the endless parade of guests, there was hardly a second where she wasn't in motion. When I finally caught her near the head table, I touched her arm gently. "Ava, can we talk for just a minute? About my seat?" She barely looked at me. "Not now, Sam. Please, just sit where you're told, and don't make a scene." Her eyes were already scanning the room for someone more important. Her dismissal hit harder than the metal chair. I wasn't just being ignored. I was being erased, right there in front of everyone. I stepped back, my throat tight. If I pushed harder, I knew exactly what would happen. My parents would accuse me of ruining her day. The guests would stare, and I would be branded dramatic. It wouldn't matter that I had been shoved to the margins. The story would always be, Sam couldn't handle it. So instead, I chose silence. Not the weak silence I had lived with my whole life, but a deliberate one. I returned to my chair, gathered my wrap and purse, and stared at the dance floor. For the first time, I realized I didn't have to stay. I didn't have to swallow it. I didn't have to wait for a crumb of acknowledgement that would never come. I slipped out through a side hallway into the lobby where the noise dimmed to a low hum. At the front desk, I asked for a piece of stationery and a pen. My hand shook as I wrote, "Emily, your wedding was beautiful. I'm happy you found someone who loves you." But when I saw my name listed at Overflow, when I sat beside the restrooms while strangers enjoyed tables of roses and candlelight, I realized something. This wasn't about a chair. It was about a lifetime of being treated as less. I've always supported you, and I deserved better tonight. I hope one day you understand why I had to leave. Sam. I folded the note, slipped a 20 into the waiter's palm, and asked him to deliver it an hour later, after the cake cutting, so I wouldn't disrupt the moment. As I headed toward the exit, I passed the planner's station. Her iPad was still propped open, notifications glowing. I shouldn't have looked, but my eyes snagged on the seating app. The screen displayed the audit log, a neat column of edits with timestamps. 2 days before the wedding, my name had been listed at family table 3. Then, edited by user Ava Reed, overflow 1, restroom corridor. My knees nearly buckled. It wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't my imagination. Ava herself had reassigned me, consciously, intentionally, permanently. I snapped a photo of the log, the glow of the screen lighting my trembling hands. Not to post, not to humiliate her, but to remind myself that I wasn't crazy, that this was real, that I had proof. Sliding my phone back into my clutch, I straightened my spine. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I walked toward the valet stand. Inside, the DJ announced the father-daughter dance. Guests cheered. No one noticed I was gone. But for the first time, that didn't devastate me. It freed me. Because now I had clarity. My whole life, I'd been told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too quick to imagine slights. But the audit log didn't lie. The chair by the restroom wasn't an accident. It was Ava's decision. And knowing the truth meant I could finally stop begging for a place at her table. The morning after the wedding, I woke with a dull ache in my chest. The kind that comes from holding back too much for too long. My phone was still on silent, where I'd tossed it on the nightstand. Missed calls, buzzing messages, and unread notifications covered the screen when I finally looked. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I brewed coffee and tried to sit in the quiet. For the first time in years, there was no family expectation to race toward, no list of tasks waiting. Just me in my apartment, staring at the clock as the minutes crept closer to 8, because I knew what was coming. At exactly 8 a.m., my scheduled email went out. The screenshots of the group chat, the receipt totals, the photo of the audit log, all of it, addressed only to Ava and my parents. No one else. Not out of malice, but because I wanted the truth in their hands, undeniable and unspinnable. For once, they couldn't call me dramatic. 5 minutes later, the pounding started at my door. I checked the peephole and froze. Ava stood in the hallway, hair a tangled mess, makeup smeared from crying. Gone was the flawless bride from the country club. She wore a hoodie over pajama shorts and sandals, gripping her phone like a lifeline. I opened the door slowly. "What are you doing here?" She pushed inside without waiting. "How could you, Sam?" Her voice cracked. "How could you send that email?" My pulse jumped. "You mean the evidence of what you did to me last night? The chart, the receipts, the group chat. That email." She sank onto my couch, clutching her head. "Do you know what happened after you left?" People were asking questions. Liam's mother saw the chart. She asked me to explain why my sister was labeled overflow by the restrooms. I couldn't even deny it. And then this morning, she got wind of your email. I cut her off gently. "My email went only to you and Mom and Dad. If Liam's mother knows, that's because someone forwarded it." Ava looked up, eyes wide. "Dad forwarded it. He said if you were going to humiliate us privately, he might as well get ahead of the story." That explained the dozens of texts flooding my phone. Not just from family, but from cousins, aunts, even friends of Ava's, each with their own version of shock or judgment. I sat across from her, folding my arms. "Ava, I didn't want to embarrass you. I just wanted the truth written down where no one could erase it. You reassigned me yourself. I saw the log." Her lips parted, but no excuse came, only silence. Finally, she whispered, "Liam's furious. He asked me last night if this is how our family treats each other. We argued until dawn. He wouldn't even stay in the room with me." For a second, pity surged through me, but it was tangled with something sharper. Because while she wept about her husband's disappointment, I was still carrying decades of dismissal. I'm sorry your marriage started with a fight, I said carefully. But you need to understand, this isn't just about a chair. This was about 32 years of being the afterthought. She wiped her eyes. I thought you wouldn't mind. You never complain. I shook my head. Not complaining isn't the same as not hurting. Before she could answer, her phone buzzed violently in her lap. Her face went pale as she read the screen. Mom says Liam's parents are demanding a family meeting. She says this is all your fault. But I could see in Ava's eyes that she knew better. 6 months passed before I saw my sister again. 6 months of silence from my parents, except for the angry texts I never answered. 6 months of distance that felt equal parts terrifying and liberating. During that time, I did something I should have done years earlier. I started therapy. For once, I had a space where my feelings weren't minimized or mocked. My therapist called it the unfavored child pattern. She explained how favoritism distorts both siblings. One grows up entitled, the other invisible. Hearing someone name it so clearly broke something open inside me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I had been living in a system that rewarded my silence and punished my truth. I let myself rebuild. I ended things with my boyfriend, realizing his half-hearted effort was just another version of what I had always accepted. I joined a book club, went hiking on weekends, and reconnected with friends I had pushed aside while constantly running errands for Ava and my parents. For the first time in years, I had a life that was mine. Then, one chilly November morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Ava. Would you meet me for coffee? Just to talk. I hesitated, but something in her words felt different. Not entitled, not demanding, just asking. When we finally met, Ava looked unlike the sister I had known. No designer dress, no flawless makeup, just jeans, a sweater, and eyes that carried humility I'd never seen before. Sam, she began, fingers twisting around her cup. I'm sorry. Not just for the chair, but for years of not seeing you. I don't know if I can undo it, but I want to try. Her words were halting, but they were real. For the first time, she admitted she had enjoyed being the favorite, that it had been easier to play along than to question our parents' cruelty. She told me about fights with Liam, about how counseling had forced her to face uncomfortable truths. I don't want to raise kids in that same dynamic, she whispered. I don't want them to learn love is conditional. We talked for nearly 3 hours. I told her about therapy, about how I wasn't willing to be the family's doormat anymore. I said plainly, if you want me in your life, it has to be as your equal, not as your servant. She nodded, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. A week later, she invited me to Thanksgiving dinner, hosted at her home. Not our parents. I almost said no. But in the end, curiosity and a cautious hope pulled me through the door. The evening was tense. My parents acted as though nothing had ever happened, smiling too brightly, commenting on the turkey, avoiding any mention of the wedding. For most of the meal, I stayed quiet, content to observe. Then, as dessert was served, my mother couldn't resist. Sam, she said sweetly, I hope you're not still sensitive about that silly chair. You know it was just a mix-up. I put my fork down. My voice was calm, steady. It wasn't a mix-up. My name was moved from family table to overflow. I saw the log. I was treated like an afterthought on purpose. The table went silent. My father bristled, ready to dismiss me. But then Ava spoke. She's right, she said firmly. It wasn't a mistake. I went along with it, and it was wrong. I've apologized to Sam, and I think you both should too. Our parents stared at her, as though she had betrayed them. My father muttered something about family loyalty. Then both of them rose from the table and left early, coats in hand, faces stiff. For once, their exit didn't crush me. It freed me. That night, as Ava cleared plates beside me, she whispered, "Thank you for giving me another chance." I nodded. "Thank you for finally seeing me." Because that's what it came down to. Not a chair, not a chart, not even a wedding. It was about 32 years of wanting to be valued. And here's the lesson I carried forward. Love and forgiveness are possible, but not at the cost of erasing yourself. Boundaries don't mean you hate your family. They mean you love yourself enough to stop accepting scraps. I don't know what the future will hold with my parents. Maybe nothing. But with Ava, at least, there is a fragile beginning. And for me, there is clarity. I will never again sit quietly in a folding chair by the restroom, literally or figuratively. I will walk toward the life I deserve, one filled with dignity, compassion, and the courage to love without losing myself.